the exams committee for quite some time, very familiar with the mistakes some of these candidates do. And he's going to share a lot of those learnings and a lot of those tips today with you. So I'm sure most of you who have joined in are candidates that are writing the exam. So very welcome to all of you, and I'm sure there's going to be something you will take away from today. Harriet is obviously more than just that. Over 2 decades of experience in the industry. He started off in 1996 as a mine seismologist in Anglo American in the gold and uranium division. After that, he was seconded to ISS International a year later, from 1997 to 2006, in various operations in commodities such as gold, platinum, coal, and diamonds. In 2007, Harriet joined Anglo Gold Ashanti in the rock engineering department. He obtained his qualification there, and then he was seconded to projects which looked at optimizing of mine layouts in areas where they had to go and remine and prepare it for remining. And then a lot of this work he did through numerical modeling. In 2010, he joined Open House Management Solution to head a startup of a new business unit that focused on geotechnical consultancy and numerical modeling. And the purpose of this unit was to provide specialized services to the industry. And then since 2021, Gerrit focuses on new business development, consultancy work, and technical support for MAP3D. So Gerrit has done numerous projects, and some of these typical projects he's doing is remnant design, waste dump design, probability of failure, and Monte Carlo simulations in underground and open pit designs, geotechnical inputs in aerial ropeway design, driller designs, and so the list goes on. So without any waste of time, I think we've got definitely the right person here. And Gerrit, thank you so much for making yourself available. You volunteered to do this. You're taking your own time to do this, giving back to the industry, and we really appreciate this. Unfortunately, I need to log off. I'm busy traveling. So I'm just worried that if I end this through and then please I'll finish off the session as well. But thank you so much and enjoy. Gerrit, over to you.
Thanks very much, Lizelle, for the warm welcome. Welcome to each and every one of you to this afternoon session. And I sincerely trust that I will be able to give you some tips or some overview at least on how to prepare and how to also write this exam of our industry that is very important for each and every one of us for various reasons. And I think if I also focus on some of the professional reasons why this qualification is important, I think you may experience a shift in the way you are thinking about your studies and your preparation as well. So let's start straight away. And so let's start with a bit of a discussion on exam preparation technique. So the first thing that I can tell you is to be prepared when you go into the exam and to study hard. It's definitely not an easy qualification to achieve, and you can trust me, the way the SEO syllabus is structured and the amount of work that must go into there. That's certainly on a first year BSc type of course or a engineering course. And Comrec, I would estimate, is probably on a second or third year BSc or engineering level course. So it's definitely not something that must be taken as a qualification that's easy to obtain. And for me personally, it was tough even after I've been studying on a master's degree level to start with the studies for these qualifications. So it is something different than, for example, a BSc degree with mathematics and physics, or BSc geology degree, or even an engineering degree, and therefore you have to put in a lot of hours. So the best thing is to set some goals for studying every day, And the days that you don't feel like studying, then fall back on the habit that you are busy studying for a qualification, and that must then motivate you on the days that you don't want to study, that you don't feel like studying. And I know it's tough. I had the same. You're tired from working and then you must go and study, but you've got to figure out some routine of putting in some time every single day. In my opinion, I believe that you should allow yourself 6 to 9 months before you write any of these qualifications. That's what I also did myself. Maybe you can do it in a shorter period of time, but don't go into an exam and just go and write it because your boss said so. Try to explain to him that you need some time, and that some other advice that you received was that you should wait between 6 and 9 months, which you must then use to study hard and get some insights into the work, of course. And then also remember, when you go from the SEO exam to the Comrec exams, there's a big jump between what is required from you on SEO level in the exam versus what is required from you on Comrec exam level. In terms of the mathematics, in terms of the precision and the engineering way of thinking, there's really a big jump, because in the SEO, on the SEO level, there's lots of theory, and with little experience, you can actually fake it and actually pass an exam if you really prepared well. But when you get to Comrec exams, you have to start adopting an engineering mindset, and also you have to start think like an engineer and fall back on your experience. So the next thing is for when you're preparing for the exams, remember to study first and then look at past papers. Don't fall in the habit of looking at past papers and then think that if you just go through enough past papers, then you will actually pass the exam. And that goes for both qualifications. And it's just human to look at the answer if you don't get the question, if you don't understand it, to look at the answer and work your way back and see if you can understand the answer. And that has got limited effect in terms of learning what went wrong and what needs to be done. So hide the answers, and hide the answers before you attempt to do any past exam paper. That's some good advice. Otherwise, you get into the habit of learning the model answers as opposed to understanding the work, or understanding model answers as opposed to understanding the work. Also study everything in the syllabus. I often speak to examiners and then they say, well, it was straight from the syllabus. People did not study because they only focused on past papers. So they did not cover the full syllabus. Then I must also say that it is indeed a lot of work. And I once received this very valuable advice from a lecturer of mine, that you must always accept that there will be some theory or some long question or some knowledge that you have to put down verbatim in an exam paper that you will not remember as good as other parts. And you must set some goals for yourself. Make sure that you know 100% of most of the theory off by heart, and that this is that you leave a small bit of the work, that when you run out of time, that at least you know about 75% or 80% of that work. So some academic personnel will probably shoot me for saying a thing like this, but that's the reality when you prepare for any exam, that you cannot remember everything. But then you must make sure that the part of your preparation which you know is 100%, that for sure you must be able to give in the exam as well, and be able to convince the examiner that you also know exactly 100% of that work. Otherwise, you're really going to fail. Then there's various ways of accumulating your own experience base. It's not an excuse to say that you don't get opportunities at a shaft. You must actually go and look for those opportunities and make them happen. And go and read about things. Go underground, talk to seniors. Do numerical modeling. Use the Map3D demo. Build your own spreadsheets of observations and write down pillar dimensions. Write down support types. Write down your own, plot your observations on graphs and do some contour maps. Simple stuff. I mean, there's the software package Gem4D, which is freeware. If you go to the basrock.net website, there's lots of tutorials on operating that program, and it's for free. And think about stuff, make mistakes, but then also make sure that you correct them. And your own experience is certainly a powerful base that you can fall back on and which you can refer to when you sit an exam. That's basically the only thing that you've got if you have to start applying certain things that the examiner requires from you in the exam situation. So there's some study materials. If you're not aware of them, there's plenty of information on the Sanire website. Of course, when you become a member of Sanire, then you're automatically a member of the ISRM as well. So there's the ISRM website as well. The ISRM has got lots of videos and guest lecturers saying things about rock mechanics. Then the University of British Columbia has got a very, very nice website. Lots of material, which is just so relevant to the stuff that you are studying right now. Then, of course, there's the Australian Centre for Geomechanics, the ACG. I've also given you the link to that website, and they've got lots of journal papers for free. Journal papers that were published as part of their seminars that they're presenting. Then, of course, I encourage you to, if you are not a member of Sanire and the ISRM, then to definitely become a member of Sanire or the ISRM. There's lots of benefits in being a Sanire member. There's Sanire hosted workshops, and some of the stuff has got some very, very good information in them. There's Sanire workshops, there's webinars. There's some ACG seminars and webinars. Some you have to pay for, some are for free. There's ISRM videos that you can watch. There's role players in the industry like ourselves that offer courses for people that are preparing for exams. So there's definitely lots of opportunities to learn and to speak to other people and to absorb information which will help you to prepare for the exam. And that's required from you. If you think you don't have enough time for that, you only want to study, that's not the right approach. That's basically most students' attitude towards any material or any course. There's not enough time to go into the extra stuff, but it's actually expected of you for good reason. And it actually makes the whole studying process easier. And also when you have to write an answer based on your experience and you don't yet have experience, then at least you can say, but you have learned on a seminar that at such and such a mine, this support method is practiced, or this is the way that you excavate ground in adverse ground conditions. And then I've also have taken the liberty to show you the S model in rock mechanics. Some of you that have attended a MAP 3D numerical modeling course hosted by my company and presented by myself will certainly be aware of the S model in rock mechanics. And then also in those trainings, I talk about the wheel of design, but I want to share that information with you because it tells you what engineering design entails. So if you think it's one thing to consider that you are studying towards a qualification, but this is something professional that you are busy doing. And for people to take you serious, when you eventually obtain the qualification, you have to follow certain protocol and diligence when you do a design. Otherwise, people will not respect you, and they will also poke holes in your design and criticize the work that you're doing. So the first thing is the design process in rock engineering, and I want to put that against the goals for achieving the qualification. So there's certain things that you have to do when you do any rock mechanics design, and these things, point number 1 to 10, that's all of each and every one of those actions that you need to take when you do a design. And if you look at the study material that you are considering now for exam preparation, that study material is aimed at addressing each of these points. So maybe this will give you or show you the light about the syllabus, because the syllabus is somewhat intimidating. There's lots of stuff there in that syllabus that you need to study, but maybe this can be a useful mind map for yourself to look at when you study. So let's briefly go through the rock mechanics wheel of design. And remember now that we're doing this with a view of of you being able to practice each and every one of these 10 steps in your job as a rock engineer one of these days, very soon. So there's two parts in this wheel of design. The first one is defining the design, and the second part is executing the design. So problem statement, that could, for example, be a tunnel that is mining at a certain depth below surface. And requirements and constraints is that the shortest possible length of tunnel needs to be developed because it's expensive. But then in doing so, you can unlock a piece of ground that can give you some gold or platinum. And another constraint might be that you are going to pass underneath an abutment, and therefore you need to consider abutment stresses. So try to focus on all the buzzwords that I'm using and see where the study material fits in. So the next thing would be uncertainty minimization, collection of information. So that could be core logging, that could be window mapping, doing rock mass qualifications, selecting samples and sending them to the laboratory, right? So now immediately think sending a sample to a laboratory. That means you need to know what is a UCS test, what is a UCM test, what is TCS, what is UTB, what is shear strength test on open joints. What do we do with that information? What happens if somebody gives you that information and you have to process the data, right? So that's just one of the aspects of point number 3 in the design process. And you can fill in your own, you can color it in. Maybe you're bored with the current way the syllabus is structured in the sheets that you print out from the internet, and maybe restructure it. Maybe this is an easier way to understand it because you can appreciate this is what we're working towards. So the next one would be concept formulation. That would be on a simple level, drafting a mine plan in MicroStation or in Gem4D or in the Deswik software and visualizing the problem at hand. This tunnel that we talked about that will pass underneath an abutment. So that also entails when you're studying for a like maybe the SEO exam, the practical, then you need to be able to read plans. You need to know where's north, how to draw a section, what's all the different things that appear on plans, what's the hanging wall development, what's footwall development, what's a fault, what's a dike, how do you bring that into the software. And then number 5 is design analysis. That's numerical modeling. That's none other than numerical modeling, but it can also be empirical calculations. So then the Kirsch equations comes to mind, the elastic closure, elastic convergence equations by Solomon, numerical modeling. So you need to know how to operate each and every one of those analytical equations and also know the different codes where they are applicable. If it's for a continuum, it's for discontinuum, jointed rock mass, few joints, many joints, massive rock. You all need to know what's the different definitions of those things that I've just said, and how do they link up with numerical modeling. Then alternatives, evaluation and optimization. That's perhaps when you study to do with different sequences that can be followed to minimize seismicity or to reduce high stress, how to reduce the effects of highly stressed abutments, how to develop gullies in a manner behind the face that you minimize stress fracturing, different types of support, being in a position to evaluate different support techniques, and then recommendations and so forth. So that's then perhaps more practical thing when you're doing a project. But keep in mind, all of these things talk to each other, and you have to know how to bring them together when you prepare for the higher level exams like the Comrec exam, because your opinion is often asked in an exam, and then definitely when you prepare a portfolio of evidence, you need to address all of these things in your design reports. So number 10, we talk about excavation and construction review and monitoring. So that means making observations, and it also means instrumentation. So then all the different instruments come to mind: extensometers, closure meters, stress meters. What do they measure? What's the benefits of each? What's the requirements of a monitoring system? Accuracy versus precision. Those kind of concepts. They all talk to number 10. If you don't know them, you're going to look like a fool when you have to give some advice to the production personnel. Because remember, some of these guys have got long experience, way longer than yourself. But then you have to advise a guy, give some advice to a guy or a lady that has got lots of experience in production, and they will not take you serious if they know more about it. They may not understand as much as you about stress rotations and the Kirsch equations and all of those things, but they may have a lot of experience. And if you're not going to talk with a lot of confidence about these concepts, you're really going to look like a fool. Even if you go to the practical exams, the examiners are going to pick up that you don't know this stuff. You're not fluent in all of these buzzwords. So that's why it's a good way to organize your minds, not around passing the exam, but rather than being a professional, adding some value wherever you go. So that's on a high level, the design, the wheel of design, and maybe a different way of looking at the syllabus. I've also got something that's a mind map that I give credit to Mr. Jacques Lucas, who introduced me to this when I started my career. And you notice you can check on that CV that Lizelle read how long ago I started my career. So that's how long ago Jacques told me this. And it's still very valid. If you look at the S model, which I'm going to take you through just now, it's a nice way to organize your mind when you do problem solving on the ground or when you do a project. And you have to look at rock mass response and assess what are the critical factors for determining the rock mass response to mining. Then you can certainly use the S model. And also when you prepare for the exam, I think the S model is a very good mind map to organize the syllabus so that you know that this is the way of thinking of the practitioner that also happens to be the person that sets the exam. He comes from a practical background, and he wants to test your knowledge about certain things that you read about and that you study about in the official materials. But then the S model, for example, is there to help you organize your mind, to give practical responses to questions in the exam. So there's the S model. You will see there's a whole lot of things that starts with S. The first thing is stress, and I'm going to list some of the buzzwords, and this is as important to the SEO as it is to the Comrec exams. And you can fill in all these boxes because I'm going to shoot a couple of buzzwords and content of the syllabus that goes under the heading of stress, and then you can fill in and add in and write down your own and complete this mind map for each of these S's. And when you're done, you're pretty much covering the entire syllabus. So let's look at the first one. Stress, the unit is MPa. It's written in a specific way, capital M, capital P, lowercase a. The definition of stress is force over area. Where does stress come from? That's a thing that many people battle with. It's due to the overburden stress, or OGH. But then there's also theories like the theory of lateral confinement that informs how stress is formed underground. Why do we have an in situ stress value? And then you talk about things like field stress and induced stress, and you think of what is the Kirsch equations mean. I mean, when you do an analytical calculation, you calculate the field stress or you calculate induced stress. All of those things fall under stress. The cube, that little cube that you always have to draw in the exam, showing the direction of the normal stresses and shear stresses. That is under stress, and you can add in stress measurements. There's just so many things you can add in that box. Then strength, and how the ratio of strength to stress is like a capacity over demand. It's like a safety factor. So if the rock can either respond in a certain manner, which could look like failure because the stress is too high, or because the strength is too low. So you can have a low stress condition, but a weak rock, then you would also have a low factor of safety. But then you've got to know what strength of the rock means. Again, UCS tests, lab tests, all the different kind of lab tests. What is the difference between an intact sample and an in situ sample? What does confined test mean? What is an unconfined test? What is the brittle ductile transition? What does it mean? What is softening? Can you draw that on a stress strain curve? And can you take laboratory data and can you plot that on a graph and then report back what is the UCS, what is the cohesion, what is the friction angle? Can you do those things? So that would fall under strength, and you can add them. Then structure. There's typically a whole section just on the influence of structure on the rock mass conditions. So what the structures do, it tends to weaken the rock mass, but there's certain properties of structures or joint properties that you need to know what they mean and know how to measure them in practice. How would you do scanline mapping to be able to quantify the structure and the spacing and all of those things? So data collection. How do you do data collection, and what does your syllabus say about data collection? What does JA mean? What does JR mean? How does the infill affect the strength of the structure? Status, the next one, that would be something to do with the Q system or the RMR system or MRMR or GSI and all the parameters that plug into those systems. Then you've got the next one, support. 95% fallout thickness. What do we use J-block for? How do you design support for static conditions, for supporting dead weight? How do you consider dynamic conditions or any energy absorption requirements for the purpose of designing support? So that's all under S, but you can certainly add a few more. Then seismicity. What's the energy? What's the moment? What's the location accuracy? Well, how do you define a seismic event? What is a rock burst? What is a seismic event? What is a strain burst? What's the different kind of fractures that you observe on the ground? Which of those fractures are being measured with a seismic system, or responses from those fractures are being measured with the seismic system or seismic energy that we detect underground? What's the function of barrier pillars and regional fill to reduce seismicity? What's the critical dimensions for pillars to cause seismicity? All of those things, you can add them plenty. There's plenty of things under seismicity. Simulations, of course, I had to throw that in because that's numerical modeling codes. So you have to know all the different numerical modeling codes. Finite element, boundary element, distinct element, finite difference, particle flow code, PFC. You have to know something about those codes. If you don't know something about them, then send me an email. I can send you some abbreviated material. But there's also lots of stuff in the notes to distinguish between the different numerical modeling codes, not only knowing what they are and what they're doing, but also the situations where you apply boundary element or finite element. Which one of the codes are suitable for using in a jointed environment? All of those things. And then Occam's razor is also something that comes up quite often. Describe what is Occam's razor. Occam's razor is simply something we use in engineering. And it's from a philosopher, namely William of Ockham, that lived in the 1200s. And he said that in most cases, the solutions in engineering to some problem or some design is something that's very simple and it's apparent. It's just here in front of our eyes. So when we do designs, look for simple things that can solve the rock engineering problem. And that is Occam's razor. Keep it straightforward and simple, the KISS principle. And that is often applied in numerical modeling codes as well. When you've got a complex rock mass, and then look for easy ways how you can simplify the behavior of the rock mass that you're going to model, and make sure that you know that simplification that you propose is matched with the correct numerical modeling code. And therefore, you have to have knowledge about numerical modeling codes as well. Sequence. So let's talk about sequence. Sequence is a way to proactively minimize abutment stresses and ameliorate seismicity at various depths where you can have adverse stresses due to mining configuration or at a deeper elevation where it's due to high stresses. So and that's something that we can engineer out of the mine plans if we catch this problem in time. So be aware of sequence, and sequence is actually slightly different from layout. Unfortunately, I have to still think about layout. What would an S be that would talk to the term layout? But layout is as important as sequence. And then you really talk about the different mining methods that's available. So when you see sequence, then just make a mental note somewhere that sequence also talks to layouts and the different mining methods, which you also have to be aware of when you study, and also if you go on the ground and you look at a particular problem. Then you've got surveillance, and that directly links with observations, visual or instrumentation. So like I said before, in the wheel of design, step number 10, observations being visual or instrumentation, you got to know what to look for, what to record, look at other people's work, what they record for a specific problem at hand. width to height ratios of pillars, for example, closure meters that you install in a stope, extensometers, how do you deal with the data, how do you process the data. That's all in the syllabus, and that all talks to all of the other S's, each and every one of them, and that's the S model in rock mechanics. In my mind, a very useful way of organizing the material. So let's talk about exam technique. So it's very sad if you see a person that's really prepared, but he got stuck in one question and there's stuff left at the end of the time permitted to complete the exam, and it did not get to those questions. So the main thing is that you must allow enough time to answer each question. And the math is relatively simple. It's 100 marks and it's 3 hours for Comrec. And there's 4 questions, so it means there's 45 minutes per question. So you can work out the number of marks per minute that you have to achieve to complete each question. But compartmentalize the exam paper. Allow 5 minutes just to read through the paper. Don't see that as time wasted. See it as planning so that you can properly answer the exam paper. Mark the questions you know best or feel comfortable with, so that you can do them first, and then answer those first. And this will give you a confidence boost. So exam technique is about psychology a bit as well, which I don't know too much about. But all I know is that if you start looking at a question that you can really answer well, that will really make you feel good and less stressed. It means it opens your mind and you'll be able to do the rest. And there's so many occasions where I've done this, where I've practiced this technique. And then when I look at the other questions, then I say to myself, hell, they're actually very, very easy. I was just thrown off by the wording or something, but now that I've completed the first question, I feel so good, I'm going to do the rest of them. And that's the sweet spot you want to be in, because then you know you're going to do very well in the exam. But obviously you need to prepare. You're not going to be in that situation if you did not prepare well. Also complete one question at a time. Don't do question 1A and then directly beneath that question 2C. That's not what I mean. Go to question number 1 and complete question number 1. If the next best question that you feel comfortable with is question number 4, then do question number 4 after question number 1. And don't leave space between question number 1 and number 4 to squeeze in number 2 and number 3. Do it number 1, number 4, and then whichever one goes after that. Then something simple. People tend to write on the left-hand side of the exam book, and that's not permitted really. If you look at the rules of the exam, it's only there for rough work, and the examiner sometimes feel for the person that completed most of the work there, and he gives them a few extra marks, but you got to be consistent. So then you got to do it for everybody, and that amounts then to an inconsistency. And this is the rule of the exam. Don't write on the left-hand side and expect that to count towards your mark. What does make sense if you want to do some rough calculations on the left-hand side of your exam book, and what certainly gives you a confidence boost, is when you open the exam paper and you look at question 1, for example, as you read through the question, before looking at what they actually want you to do, start writing the information as you receive them while you read through. So if they say that mine A is at a depth of 3,000 meters below surface, then you write down 3,000 meters below surface on the right-hand side of your book, and it's like at the heading of the answer that you are about to formulate. And then they say, no, this is a platinum mine, and you can assume a density of the overburden of 3,200 kilograms per meters cube. So then you write down that information as well. And then before you answer anything else, before you look at what they want you to do in that question, when they give you that information, certainly there's going to be some stress calculations involved, that you must find the overburden and maybe the horizontal stresses. So quickly do the rho GH calculation, because then you already have calculated the pre-mining stresses. And if they give you a K ratio, as you read through the question, quickly calculate the horizontal stresses and write that down. And I promise you that will give you a confidence boost as well. If you start writing down information, not going on a tangent and answering a question before you're looking at the question, but writing down the information and decoding what they're giving to you. And then often you will be astonished that the first question is calculate the horizontal the pre-mining horizontal stress. And then you say, boom, I've already done that as part of my preparation and sinking into this question and making this my own. And then that is just confidence all the way with the rest of the question. So remember that. Also write clearly. And what I found in all my career of writing exams, which by the way, I hate exams, gives me a lot of stress. It's really human to experience a lot of stress when you write exams. But in any case, if you underline some key points that you are making, examiners and moderators are humans, and when they write the exam, or when they mark your paper, they tend to look at stuff that you've underlined and written in a legible manner. So that catches their eye. And if you are looking really professional in the way you respond, and your answers are obviously factually correct, and they conform to what was required for that question, the fact that you underline the key points makes the examiner just feel a lot more positive about your response than a person that did not write clearly or just made a big mess with his exam paper, scratched out things and looks disorganized and so forth. So that's a tip that I can certainly give you. Then if they ask you to complete definitions, then give them verbatim from the handbooks and the source materials. It sometimes happens that you're a bit stressed and you really cannot remember the full definition. Then you just have to accept it. That's tough. But then in addition, try to use graphs and equations in your explanations to color it in if you really cannot remember the definition. But definitions of quantities in engineering, it's crucial that you remember them and give them verbatim when you are being asked in an exam. It's also marks in your back pocket if you can answer those. So know your definitions well. And then the last bullet, I cannot stress this more than anything else, that you must use the correct units. Kilogram is kg, small letters, not capital K, capital G. Capital K is Kelvin and G is the universal gravitational constant. And even worse is capital K and small g. Megapascal is capital M, capital P, lowercase a, not lowercase m, capital P, lowercase a, or all caps. And typically in the exam, especially in paper 1, there's 2 marks per question. One is for the correct unit, and the other is for the answer that is correct. So I promise you that if you've got the incorrect unit, or if it's not using uppercase and lowercase in the correct format, you're not going to get the full marks for that question. And you mustn't drop yourself in shame because you are not using the correct units. You are studying towards some engineering qualification, and you want to be respected for being accurate and paying attention to detail when you express your answers in terms of SI units. So don't drop the ball when you use the incorrect units and then also lose marks. So the Comrec exam, I want to say something in addition to what I've already said. I'm no longer an examiner, so I can express an opinion about things that I've seen commonly occurring in paper 1. And I'm not guessing what is going to be in the next paper. I don't know what's in the next paper. I don't even know who is the replacement examiner and moderator at this stage. It's irrelevant. But I must also say that it does not take that much of wit to figure out that in paper 1, there's most likely going to be a Moore circle, or there's going to be Kirsch equations, or you're going to be asked to plot laboratory test data, or you're going to be asked to do some stress transformations and rotations. That's not a big deal for anybody to figure that out. So it's really criminal if you don't study for those things, and make sure you know each and every one of those bullet points off by heart. And once you do that, then you can look at questions and make sure that you can answer Moore circle and Kirsch and plotting lab data and stress transformations, literally, if you pardon the pun, from all angles. So I've looked at some sources for an easy way to explain Moore circle to people. And I found this YouTube video, which I've distributed to some of you already, that I've seen recently on on the sites where I go. But I want to play you this video about Moore Circle. It's close to 10 minutes. We still have enough time to finish this video and then also to have a few questions before we end up the session. So I want to encourage you to stick around for this video. I think it's really worthwhile to check this guy's explanation. And what is rare about this explanation is that it's actually the rock mechanics version of the Moore Circle. It's not the engineering guy's version of the the Moore Circle. It's the rock mechanics version of the Moore Circle. So that is what makes this presentation unique. So the person is starting off, I don't want to steal his show, but he's starting off by drawing the two axes for the Moore Circle. Bottom axis, horizontal axis is the normal stresses, and the vertical one is the shear stresses. I think he will say that again in his video. But I'm going to play that video now. So enjoy, and you'd be able to get this presentation from Sanire. So you can catch the video again on YouTube sometime when you are busy preparing. So enjoy. Here goes.
I got it. The video is
a question from somebody.
Yeah, the video is not yet up on my side. I don't know about others.
Shall I stop it and then see if I share it again?
Okay.
So let me start the share again. And for your benefit, I'm just going to play the video again because I really think this is important for everybody. If I switch off my video now, can you still see the screen?
I think I can see the video from here now.
You can see the video now. Okay, so I'm going to switch off my video, and I'm not sure if I must switch off my mic when I play a video, and if you will still be able to hear the sound on the video. So I'm going to keep my mic on, and let's see if we can still hear the sound of the video.
There's no sound from the video.
There's no sound.
Yeah.
So could some people hear some of the sound when I was muting the mic, or no sound at all?
There's no sound at all. When you press the share button, there must be something that allows you to share the sound.
Okay, so let me try to do that as well.
Yeah. So on top it says include computer sound. So if you can switch that on your side and then share the video.
Where about is that?
When you click share.
Right.
And then there on
computer.
top.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
I think it's really worthwhile if we start the video again.
Okay. Thank you.
Can you hear that?
You're not sharing yet. If you can please share your screen.
That better, or was it still very faint?
Not getting any sound from the
Not
video.
hearing any sound. So the video is not worth much without the sound. So I'm going to keep as a backup, I'm just going to leave this on the screen, and I'll share my presentation again. So until you wait for Sanire just to distribute that to everybody, you can, in the meanwhile, write down that address, https://youtube.be and so forth. And write that down and go and check this video at your own time. It's self-explanatory, and it's really a very good explanation about the Moore circle. So even when you go and study and you look at some of the questions, you'll be able to apply this technique that the person is explaining, and I'm positive it would help you quite a bit. So I think instead, let's allow some time for questions. Any questions that you would like to ask me?
Good afternoon, Gerard. How are you?
Very well, thanks. And you?
Good, thank you. It's JP speaking here. I just want to have clarity. Like you said, regarding the questions, say for instance, I feel more comfortable with question 3.
Yes.
So I can start with question 3, then maybe say there's a question 4, and then I can go to question 1 and then 2. So there's no spaces that we need to leave open. You can just do it that way, and they will mark it that way that you answered it.
Yes, for sure. It's
Okay.
a bit of a frustration for the examiner to do it like that, or to receive a book like that. But it's fair to give the person the benefit that he wants to do question 1 and then question 4. But like you've also said, don't leave or estimate how much space needs to be between question number 1 and number 4, and then try to squeeze in 2 other questions, because inevitably you'll make some mistake about not allowing enough space between the questions. So do question 1, do question 4, and then after that, the rest of the questions.
Okay. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, Gerard.
Hello.
How are you?
Any questions?
Hello, I have a question. Hello.
Hello. Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, I have a question. Let's say, for instance, being asked to define, let me say, convergence, and
Yes.
I can't remember the words like elastic and inelastic. Can I explain that convergence in my own way, how I understand it, without having to add inelastic and elastic deformations? Am I going to be heavily penalized for not including those terms?
Sorry, could you just repeat that one part? I'm missing the critical part of your question. You cannot remember what part of the convergence?
Okay, let me say I'm being asked to define a convergence during the examination. And with convergence, we have keywords like elastic, deformation, and inelastic. So now let's say I have forgotten the elastic part and inelastic part. Can I explain convergence in my own understanding, without having to include those key terms for those definitions?
Yeah, you will get some of the marks, certainly. But obviously you want to minimize those situations where you only get some of the marks. But it's just human. Sometimes you forget something. But then you will get some marks for that at least.
Okay.
sorry, I missed that question. I switched off my video now. I don't know if you maybe want to repeat it, or maybe that was it.
Yeah, no, that was it. I'll remember other questions as others are continue asking questions.
Good stuff.
Hi, Gerard, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, clearly.
Yes, I just wanted the way you described the S model and the design process method. Is there a clear distinction between paper 2 and paper 3, or is there a strong interface so it's not impossible to attempt like both of them at the same time instead of trying to separate the papers, because it sounds like these papers are very interlinked and integrated together?
Yes. No, that's a very good question, and I can only smile because I to some extent have the same question when I look at the syllabus, and when I wrote the exam, I focused on preparing very well for paper 2, but I also wrote paper number 3 just as a sideline, and I figured, well, the information is so close, so I'm gonna study hard for paper 2, but I'm gonna write paper 3 as well. So back in my time, I failed paper 2 completely to and become the laughing stock of the moderator at that stage, which is Jacques Lucas, which I know privately. So he thought it was very funny that he could actually let me fail a paper in the exam. And paper 3, for which I apparently did not study for, I did the best in the class. So and it's because I did not really make the distinction. I could not make the distinction between the two papers. The one paper, I think paper 3, is focused slightly on more practical stuff than paper 2. And in paper 3, you also start making your choice where you want to go into massive mining or where they're going to stay around in hard rock tabular. So yeah, it is a bit of a challenge to study for them, but I would attempt both of those papers at the same time. If you've studied hard and you've covered all the material, then certainly preparing for paper 2, you might as well go and write paper 3. That has actually always been the case, and that's why my boss also at that time encouraged me to write paper number 2 and 3 at the same time.
All right, thank you, Gerard. And then also I just wanted to know, do you have any advice, because since these papers, all of them are written like on consecutive days, is there any advice as to a tip? How do you study, or do you completely just rest and just let it, yeah, like any advice on the fact that these days you write on day 4, 5, and 6?
Very, very good question as well. Any subject that you study that has to do with mathematics, you cannot study for that subject or paper the evening before. You're going to make yourself so demakar and confuse yourself big time. And make sure you get enough rest. See it as a challenge to really relax before you write any. So that would be paper 1, and to some extent the SEO as well, because there's also lots of theory in mathematics. So the evening before, don't study for those papers. Then it's really too late. Then you must reward yourself. That's how I saw it. Reward myself. And that evening I do squat. I go and watch a movie, or I go out with my family. Of course, not have a party and go and write with a headache the next morning. Not that much relaxation, but certainly relax the evening before and get enough sleep. But don't go to bed like 8 o'clock in the evening when you're used to going to bed at 10 or 11, because otherwise you're going to wake up at 3 o'clock and you're not going to be able to sleep well, and then you're going to roll around and get stressed out. So go to bed more or less the same time than you normally do, but don't study the evening before. And with the other 2 subjects, or papers, or 3 papers, SEO, sorry, not SEO, because we already talked about that, but paper 2 and paper 3, there's also a lot of learning involved. But the same thing goes, work hard and reward yourself. Maybe if you really had a tough few days just before that exam, call it quits at 6 o'clock that night. So at least you are studying maybe for an hour or 2, but then call it quits at 6 o'clock in the evening. And again, go and relax. Reward yourself for all the evenings you sat in the past couple of months before the exam, and just chill. The same thing maybe you want to go home after you wrote the exam paper and just go and take a nap, and don't study late the evening before. It's not going to help you. It's going to confuse you. It's going to make you tired. And another thing that a math teacher also told me at school is that typically, if you have one evening of poor sleep before the exam, it's not going to affect you as much the next morning as it would have affected you when you've had several incidents before the exam in that week where you did not sleep well. So don't stress too much if you cannot sleep and because you're too stressed. And then just have a cup of coffee before you go into the exam, and don't experiment with all these funny things you buy at the pharmacy to keep you awake and make you sharp, and all of these other things that all these other substances that people use to apparently make their mind strong and bright and shiny. And also don't attempt new things. Don't start drinking chill pills now for the first time before you're writing an exam, because that kind of medications also affect people's ability. Don't do weird stuff. That's what I also say to people. Don't do stuff that's weird that you don't normally do before you go to bed. Don't try new diets. Don't try new things. Go for a walk in the evening or go for a run. That's perhaps a good thing, but don't experiment with weird sort of medication or anything like that.
Thanks, Gerrit.
Any questions or comments?
Gerrit, Sanire.
Yes. How's it going, Dumisani?
Good. How's it been going on your side?
Yes. Going great. Thank you.
Thank you. So one of the guys here who's writing SEO is asking on assumptions. Let's say maybe assuming the density of a certain rock type.
Yes.
How does it go, like with the assumptions? Does it get marks for it as long as he states it, or you just maybe just give a heads up there?
So sorry, the line was a bit bad there. Dumisani, sorry, can you just repeat the question again, please?
So he's basically asking on the examiner giving marks on assumptions. Let's say he writes the assumption and assuming the hop type of a certain hop which he's not familiar with.
Right. So in other words, you ask if you can make assumptions if you think there's not enough information.
Yes.
No, you can certainly do that if it's required from you, or if the question. But also think about it, if the examiner leaves himself open for people to make assumptions, then he's going to get a lot of hard work to do, and a difficult task to mark it in a fair way, mark everybody's paper in a fair manner. So also ask the question with the due respect. If you have to make assumptions about certain things, isn't it because you don't understand the question properly? So that can also happen. So just read through it carefully, unless they say make an assumption about the density of the overburden for a platinum mine, then it's sort of a no-brainer that you use 3.1 or 3.2.
Okay, thank you, Gerrit.
No problem. Look, we've reached 3 o'clock. You've got my email address. I want to start doing the closeout meeting and respect the time slot that was given to us to have this webinar. From my side, thank you very much for listening to me and also asking those questions. They're very relevant questions. And yeah, we just scraped the tip of the iceberg here with regards to exam preparation and exam technique and so forth. We haven't even reached the stage where we start talking about the actual work and going into the technicalities. I see there's someone from Palabora that's got a question before we leave. So from my side, before I just want to thank you all, and then I'll carry on with the with a question there. So Nazelle also asked me to close out. So if there's any other person that wants to ask me questions, I'll certainly stick around. I see there's at least 2. And yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for this opportunity also to listen to my experience and my take on exams. Yes, who's going to be first? I'm listening.
Gerrit, it's Liam speaking. Hi, how's it?
Yes, good, and you, man?
I'm good. I just wanted to ask the question regarding, so like a calculation question, right? If I'm to do a question and in the first question, it's a follow-up question, right?
Right.
And I get a small calculation wrong in the first question, but I need that answer to finish my next question, the question on that. Do we get part marks for that, or are you completely, do you miss everything?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because yeah, examiners are also human. They like to help people, contrary to what the students might be believing about the examiners. They like to help people, but it really becomes an impossible task to work with each and every person's mistake. And what you're actually then doing to some extent is that you are somewhat allowing a person to make an engineering calculation based on the wrong parameters. So so that's the kind of thing that you'd like to avoid, because you can maybe compare yourself to other disciplines. Maybe the doctor's a good thing, and maybe it's like an old saying or an old comparison. You don't want to go to a doctor that only got like 58% or 57%, and he was put through because the examiner felt sorry for him. So, and you also don't want a person to do a pillar design, and then because he made a few wrong assumptions, the whole mine collapsed. So that's all arguments that's not really in favor of working with somebody's mistake. Possibly under very exceptional circumstances, the examiner will work with the person's mistake and carry on. But as a rule, if you made a mistake, then basically that's it.
Okay, thank you. And then another one is in terms of definitions. If I understand something a certain way and I put it in my own words and not to the book, will I get a mark for that, or will I lose that as well?
I would mark it if it's technically correct, if it's not waffle, if it's clear and it's legible, and you've used some technical terminology. But if you cannot remember what is what do you call the slope of the stress strain curve, if you cannot remember it and you just say that thing we call the slope of the stress strain curve, then certainly that example is not constituting a definition that is worthwhile mentioning or considering. So you've got to be technically correct in your definition. So if it's slightly different, then certainly it will be considered.
Okay, thank you so much, Gerrit.
Good stuff, and your pleasure. Okay, there's some questions.
Yes. Hi, Ferris.
Yes, how's it going?
What's up? It's B Palabora here. I just want to check. I see mostly you guys offer paper 1 only for training classes preparation. I'm not sure if you also do with the paper 2, because we're more interested in the paper 2.
OHMS is currently actually presenting to one of the big mining groups a paper 2 course just for them. But yeah, we certainly do paper 1, 2, and 3.
Okay. So if I need to book for the whole team, let's say for in Palabra, can we do that for online training, or we need to come that side, contact classes?
Well, it's online training. It's got its benefits. It's flexible to all the parties concerned, and it's also cheaper. But if you've got a special need, it certainly makes sense for when a shaft with a lot of guys writing, if they want a person from us to come there, then it's cheaper if we just travel to you and we help you out there.
Okay.
But you've got my contact details if you want to take this further offline.
Yes, I'll do that. Yeah.
Problem.
Hi, Gerrit.
I see it's Alfred. Is that correct?
Yes. I wanted to ask a specific question on the cash equations.
Yes.
I've managed to solve a few bit of them, but
Right.
I've got a couple of ones. Probably I think it's my mistake, or it's probably the right answer, but I'm just not confident with it. In
Yes.
terms of when you're producing the graphs or the tangential stress and the radial stresses,
Right.
sometimes you get a very normal curved shape for the radial and the tangential stress coming closer together as you go further away from the.
Correct.
Yes, but sometimes you see a value maybe of the tangential stress going up and probably going down and then up again, which gives not a very curvature graph, if I can say, or a very consistent graph. So it gets one confused, if I can say, to say, is this the right answer or I've messed it up somewhere?
I would, if it was me, then I would certainly question any values that will make that graph go up and then suddenly down again towards the, especially if it's towards the tail end, because if you look at the tangential stress away from a tunnel, then it will just decrease and it will fall back to the pre-mining stress state.
Yeah.
So if you get something different, that's where your knowledge and your preparation comes in. If you get something different than that, then you got to ask yourself, maybe I made a mistake rather. And the key to the Kirsch equations is that, say, when you take the tangential stress calculation, whatever answer you get from tangential stress calculation, say you're looking at theta equals 0 degrees, and you're looking at a tunnel like that one question that appeared in a recent exam, then whatever answer you get from the Kirsch equations contains at theta equals 0 degrees, the vertical pre-mining stress plus the induced stresses. So that's the key to the Kirsch equations, that it gives you the field stress there as a result of the excavation contains the pre-mining stress plus the induced stress.
Okay. So are you confirming that there is the tail end? Yes, you have to get the results getting closer and closer to each other. But is it possible? Is it possible as you get the first answers closer to the tunnel that you might get a graph that goes probably up and down and without
that graph that expresses tangential stress must be a smooth graph that increases very sharply close to the excavation, and it drops off very sharply towards the pre-mining stress state, far away from the excavation. If it's not like that, then you probably made a mistake, or the person that did the calculation and showed you the calculation made a bit of a mistake.
Do we have an issue where the examiner might have made the mistake?
Yeah, if the answer is incorrect, I mean, it's some of those questions you cannot really break because you have to do them on a relative basis. It's like 1.5 times or 1 1/3 of the pre-mining stress. So you really cannot break that answer because you're very limited to basically just one number that you must put down.
Okay.
So if you give anything else than that number, then it's a mistake. And the fact that you did not realize that the graph is going up and down, it constitutes an oversight on the person answering that exam.
Yeah. Okay. I think I'm answered on that one. Thank you, Gary.
No problem.
Yes.
I still got 2 hands showing. Is there any other questions? Good stuff. So you got my email address, and you are welcome to shoot me some questions. Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm closing the session on behalf of Lizelle, who asked me to do that. So thank you very much for your participation and good luck with your studies. Hopefully we talk soon. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you.